Nearly 36 years after Beetlejuice came out in theaters in 1988, here we are, and Beetlejuice is back at the top of the box office. Tim Burton, Michael Keaton, and Winona Ryder reunite, and the sequel, Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, is lighting the box office on fire, at least domestically here in the United States. Beetlejuice Beetlejuice scares up near record $110 million domestic opening. Tim Burton's long-awaited sequel, returning Michael Keaton as the ghoulish prankster, scored the second best September launch of all time. And I think it came second to It, and maybe It Chapter 2 or something like that. I think that's what it came up close to. Tim Burton's long-awaited sequel is off to a rip-roaring start at the box office, as if no time had passed between now and when the first film graced the big screen 36 years ago. From Warner Brothers, the first event pick of the fall season opened to a monstrous $110 million, coming in on the high end of expectations. Whether it can successfully revive the franchise will depend on its staying power. That's kind of a weird way to look at it, because the idea that Beetlejuice is a franchise is kind of crazy. It was a movie, a movie from the 80s that did have a cartoon series. I remember watching the cartoon series in the 90s at some point. But the idea, it's like, oh, it's a big franchise, we're going to bring back the franchise. It's had one movie ever. And you could argue that it didn't need a second one. I think there's going to be some people that are big fans of the first one that they really don't like this second one. I'm not a massive fan of the first one, but I do like it. I do like the first movie. I enjoy it. The second one, I didn't enjoy it as much. The story certainly isn't as tight, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice is just one of the best characters ever graced the screen. For the people that are complaining, well, he wasn't in this movie enough, considering it's called Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Did you watch the first movie? That's one of the questions I ask you. I feel like it was lacking maybe a little heart that the first one had. When you have this journey that Lydia goes through of being someone who feels like an outcast, who feels strange and unusual, and even wanting to, end herself and go off to become a ghost herself, and then her kind of making friends with the family and them fighting to save her and her fighting to save them. This one lacked a little bit of that type of heart. It still had it in places, and I wish we had got to see a little more with Jenna Ortega's character and the boy that she's interested in. I wish we got to see more of that, and maybe a little less of the pointless Beetlejuice's wife, Dolores, who is in it. But overall, I enjoyed it. There are certainly problems with the movie itself. Some characters they focused on that they really didn't need to. And I wish we could add more of the stuff that I actually liked. But overall, audiences are really seeming to enjoy Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. You look at the audience score here, 82% verified. All audiences not that much different. Audiences sitting at 80%. Overall, if you're not a fan of Beetlejuice, there's really no reason to see it. I do think some fans are going to be massively disappointed because it's not the movie they want. Overall, I did enjoy it. Now, if the $100 million budget for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice makes $110 million domestically, add another about $40 internationally in its opening weekend, so it's already sitting around $150 million at the box office. It does need to continue to do very well to crack that $275, $300 million range, because it's just not going to do great internationally. There was basically no international release back in the day, 1988. They didn't get nearly as wide international releases as we do nowadays. But I do think it's a really good start. It's as good as they could have possibly expected for this movie. And after a series of failures from Warner Brothers at the box office this year, especially something like Furiosa over the summer, they need a win. And first weekend for Beetlejuice Beetlejuice definitely qualifies as a win. I enjoyed it. Definitely not a perfect movie. Not as good as the first one. Didn't need to be made, but I had a good time nonetheless. We'll see how it continues to do week after week. No competition this week. Second place was Deadpool and Wolverine, still at second at the box office, but a big opening weekend for the Beetlejuice sequel.